So the last 2 years in particular, or last year and a half, have just been a train wreck. Things crashing, burning. I think a lot of people are just done with the whole Belichick experience now. It's bad, man. It's bad. It's uncharted territory for them, and quite frankly, like some of this is just self-inflicted. In the back of your mind, if you're a Bills fan, you're like, still Belichick. Like I still until it's over, I'm not going to count them out. And now it's just like they don't even care. And quite frankly, I mean, they shouldn't. Have you seen the offense? Did you see them last year when they couldn't do anything? When our skill guys don't get open, when our quarterback is noodle armed, like Derrick Henry has a touchdown pass in the month of October. Mac Jones doesn't.
This is the Buffalo Plus Podcast, brought to you by Connors and Ferris.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. We appreciate it. We teased it all week. It was a recurring guest. I called him. I said if there was a Mount Rushmore of Buffalo Plus guests, it would just be 4 pictures of him. Just all 4 heads would be Mike Giardi. Appreciate it as always. I call you a friend. Like we actually talk about life, not just football. So appreciate you coming back on, man.
Excited to be here. You know, I may now strictly be covering the Patriots, but of course I pay a lot of attention to what's going on in Buffalo and my people in Buffalo. So good to be back with you as always.
From the Boston Sports Journal, make sure you follow him, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Giardi, one of the OG guests. He was one of the first subscribers we ever had as we took off to the moon. It was he was there. He was there from day one. So appreciate it as always. I guess we want to start. How bad is it in New England right now with the Patriots, man?
It's bad, man. It's bad. I could not have envisioned that this was the way this season was going to play out through the first 6 weeks. You know, I kind of looked at them and said, I think they're an 8 or 9 win team again. I think they're a middler again. And, you know, if something breaks right, maybe they get to 10. And if it goes wrong, maybe they drop to 7. Well, a 7 might at this point be like a remarkable comeback because especially over the last, say, 3 weeks, I mean, they're playing bad football. They're a bad football team. You know, there were some moments in the first 3 weeks, including a couple losses to Philly and Miami, where those scores were a little closer than the game was, but they had the ball in the fourth quarter. They had the ball late. They had a chance to either tie or go ahead against Philly, and they didn't come through. So you could convince yourself, like, it's trending in the right direction. And then, I mean, the wheels fell off the wagon in Dallas, continued against the Saints, which was a putrid performance. And then even last week, you know, I don't think Vegas is a very good football team. And they made Vegas look like a pretty good football team, at least, you know, so they're in a world of hurt right now for sure.
I know that you're very well respected and liked, even for a New England guy in the Western New York area, from all of your coverage and things like that. There are some sickos that are probably watching this right now that are just loving every word that is coming out of your mouth, that it's like, it's like the Con Air gif where like he comes out of the airplane. It's like, he's like, we have had that for 2 decades. And now, I mean, like you said, it's surprising how bad it is, because you always thought that no matter what, Belichick was playing 3-dimensional chess while everybody was playing checkers, and that he'll just be able to figure it out. And Mike, the roster is really, really depleted of talent, especially offensively, right? Yeah,
it's pretty remarkable. You know, I was doing a show last night and they said, well, you know, it's trade deadline's coming up and who would you move? And I'm like, well, pretty much anybody. And they go, well, what's the better question is, who would you keep? And I'm like, it's probably like 5 guys that I wouldn't want to move off the roster. And then they name them. And I was like, you know, like it's straining to kind of get to that point. And again, I thought they had improved their roster, but you know, whether it be Juju Smith-Schuster, which has been a debacle from jump, and the knee's not right and not really fitting into the system, to the offensive line issues. I mean, they haven't had the same 5 guys, I don't think, all year. And we're talking going back into like July. That's when the injuries started to pile up in July during the beginning of training camp. And they've continued here into October. And then of course there's the quarterback. I mean, the Bill O'Brien hiring was probably the most important thing I thought that the Patriots did in the offseason. Let's give Mac a real coordinator. And I never thought that Bill was like this cutting edge coordinator, but I think he's a good, solid guy. And he's been here before, knows how they want to do things. Good background, obviously background with Mac. Didn't really overlap. He got hired at Alabama as Mac was coming out, but Mac did help him with the offense a little bit. Just thought like he'll play to his strengths. Turns out maybe he doesn't really have any strengths. So it's just, I mean, it really is. It dramatically became this bad this quickly.
Fascinating. In a weird way. And again,
well, because you said it though. So people in Buffalo, you lived with this for this era, these 2 decades where you were chasing the Patriots, and it didn't matter what you did. You're constantly turning over GMs and head coaches and quarterbacks, trying to find the right formula to beat the Patriots. The whole division responded that way. Look at how many coaches in Miami and quarterbacks they went through. Same thing with the Jets. And now to be in this position where they're the ones who are a mess, and they're the ones who are already talking in October, is the coach going to be back? Is the quarterback going to be back? Who's, like we're talking already about who's the next coach? Like, what should they do? Should they tank? Should they try to be the 1 or 2 pick in the draft so they can get one of these quarterbacks? And then what are the other options there? Like, this is, it's uncharted territory for them. And quite frankly, like, some of this is just self-inflicted, right? I mean, they did everything they could. And again, I don't think I'm out on the quarterback. I don't think that he can be salvaged here. And I don't even know that he can be salvaged anywhere else. But like, you took what was a pretty good season his rookie year. Pretty good. Not great, but pretty good, pretty solid. And you gave him 2 hammerheads last year and Matt Patricia and Joe Judge to run the offense. And he went backwards then. And then you bring in O'Brien, and it's like it's beyond fixing. You're not. He sees the rush the moment he sees color. He's looking down. His arm has never been good. I actually think it looks worse this year. So like there's just it is, again, like I come back to these words like staggering. How quickly things have fallen off, and staggering that they're in this position that they're in, where you're looking around. I think I wrote it last week. You're looking around and you're like, we're the Arizona Cardinals. If you're the Patriots, pick the team that we're the Chicago Bears. So you're not that well. No, you got kind of are. In fact, if you look at their roster and your roster, their assets and your assets, you say if they actually got it right in one of those places, they might be better off and quicker to fix it than you will be.
Right? Wouldn't you, gun to your head, if you had to pick a fan base, if you were a fan of either team and say, well, who's more optimistic about the future? I think you'd say Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, you got 2 picks. You could probably have the first and the second picks, like, and you take the quarterback, whichever one you like, and then the second one. Do you take Marvin Harrison? Do you take the left tackle from Penn State or somebody, or do you say, hey, who wants Drake May? Come get it, and what kind of bounty can you get for that? I mean, they were in the position last year where they trade out and Bryce Young, and they get the. They fell back to 9 in the draft, but then they pick up another first and extra ass DJ Moore. Like you can do some things if they have feel like they have the right leadership. Yeah, they could absolutely. And Arizona has 2 firsts, right? So they're in a similar position where, if you stink and you get one of the quarterbacks, and then you can still add a high impact player at another position, like all of a sudden if you get it right, you've got foundational pieces. The Patriots don't have foundational pieces.
You've been to so many media days. We've been together in Buffalo over the last few years. And what was so unique about this Wednesday, as we record this on Thursday night, it's going to air Friday morning. McDermott, I think, was asked one question on Wednesday about the Patriots.
Yeah. Same thing with Josh, right? Like, struck me how far that they have fallen. That's because you would be for years. And even when Buffalo ascended here these last few years, it would still be, that's the Patriots, like Belichick's got your number, and like, how do we figure out a way? And even when you got rolling, there was still this, like, in the back of your mind, if you were a Bills fan, you're like, still Belichick. Like I still, until it's over, I'm not going to count them out. And now it's just like, they don't even care. And quite frankly, I mean, they shouldn't be more concerned with when you become that kind of team that the Bills are right now, or on the cusp of that kind of team. you should be more concerned with what's going on inward than what anyone else can do to you, because if you play it the way you're capable of, then that team doesn't stand a chance, just like the Patriots felt about the Bills for 20 years.
But it's just fascinating. We asked more questions about the Commanders, the Bills media. I mean, there were more questions that McDermott fielded about Sam Howell and the defensive line, and even the Raiders. It was, how are you going to stop Max Crosby? Like, all of these things. Like, usually every week in our jobs, we go in there and say, like, hey, we got to push forward to Sunday. That's kind of what you're trying to do. You're trying to set up things. This week, it was all about the Bills. Like, you're right. Every single time we'd go into Bills Patriots week, it was, how are you going to stop Tom Brady? How are you going to slow down Gronk? How do you stop Edelman? How do you do these things? The defense is just so good. How do you outsmart Belichick? He's dominated this team. None of that this week. Yeah. What is it like for the fans in the area in Foxborough? Like, how are they handling it? Because I imagine Boston Sports Talk Radio is on fire right now, but I just wonder what the fans are processing in all of this.
Yeah, I think it's I think a lot of people are just done with the whole Belichick experience now. Like, it's funny, for years and years and years. Like this, look, I don't want to group all the fans into one, because there are the smart fans that would sit there and listen to Belichick treat us like, a snot rag Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and post game on Sunday, and not answer questions. Like, literally, you ask him a question, he won't answer it, and then someone would ask him something the same as, I just answered it. No, you just used words. You didn't answer anything that we said. So there are always people, I think they were always like put off by that. Like, does he have to be that much of a dink? Like, is it really necessary? You're on top of the mountain. You have to do this. Now the people that were sycophants for it and just are like, oh, it's great. You guys don't deserve anything. You guys are stupid. You're trying to like, now everybody's pretty much by and large like, no, this is ridiculous. Like, yeah, welcome to our world for the last 2 decades. But what I think is interesting too is the relationship between media and fans. Like, again, we have a job to do. Like, there are plenty of media who want to be team friendly, player friendly. Like, shish boom ba rah rah rah. Always trying to find the good, even when things are going like they are right now, 1-5.
Sure.
There's so much more. Like, no, like, people are digging deeper into like last week, they decided Malik Cunningham, who's barely played quarterback at the professional level. Okay. When they signed him out of Louisville, after 32 teams decided he wasn't draftable as a quarterback, they gave him a lot of money, $200,000 in free agency, to be a wide receiver. And during the course of the summer, he briefly played quarterback in practice. And, you get those 2.5 weeks or whatever, 3 weeks where you're there, you get to watch all of them. So we're there. He's with the receivers. And then leading up to the first preseason game, he got a little snippet of practice time, like 2 series in a practice. And then he played in the game, in the back half of the game, and he ran around, and he's a good athlete. He made some plays. So of course everybody became fascinated with Malik Cunningham, even though he was doing things to guys that are now working at Starbucks. Like, but that's preseason. Everybody, every fan base, every media guy, we live this woman, we live this thing for every summer. But so he's still practiced as a wide receiver. And the only time that he's practiced during the week as a quarterback is when he's been the scout team guy. He duplicated Jalen Hurts in week 1. He did some taste.
Makes sense.
And then this week, because the offense going to the Raiders game again was just brutal, they decided we're going to give him a package. So, he practiced a little bit at quarterback for a package of plays, a handful, 6, 7, 8 plays. Well, you're thinking like he's going to be activated, but Bailey Zappi, who's the backup and started a couple games last year, he'll still be the backup, right? They'll just bring him on as the third quarterback, but not as an emergency one because he can play receiver. No. They put Bailey as the emergency quarterback, meaning if anything happened to Mac Jones, Malik Cunningham, who has barely practiced as a quarterback since becoming a professional player in April, would have been the quarterback. They would have had literally 7 or 8 plays to let him do. It would have been read option, wildcat, junk it up, do it. I mean, and people are like, normally people would be like, to your point, chess checkers, right? Belichick's thinking he's got this down. Now people are like, what was he doing? Is he tanking? Like, what was the plan there? How does that make any sense?
Especially when Mac hadn't finished the previous 2 games. It's not like you were like, well, Mac hasn't been benched. They're not going to take him out. So what does it matter? No, it has become now a thing, I imagine. I mean, at least on the outside, that like you wonder if Mac's going to be playing at the end of the game.
Well, and it's funny because everybody felt like after being pulled in the previous 2 games that the leash was going to be very short. And then your plan for the short leash is to put Malik Cunningham as the backup and have Bailey Zappi, who can't play unless both guys get hurt. So apparently the leash was a hell of a lot longer than anybody thought, including people that are inside the building that were thinking like, oh, we can't keep going this way. If he starts out like that, he's going to be out. But, Bill has his reasons. He won't tell us what those reasons are, and they generally wouldn't make sense in this case. In fact, they wouldn't make sense in this case, but that's what he did. So they actually spent, to your point about like sports radio and the culture and the fans. And again, sports radio people are a little different than just the general.
Absolutely.
But like they spent days this week, full days talking about what was the plan at quarterback. What was he doing? And people calling in like, I can't believe he did that. It's like criminal. Like what? Like how could he do it? That is the Patriot experience in 2023.
Right now, if people are still watching this, it's the meme of like the sickos. It's the sicko guy outside the window, like that they're just so in love by like Patriots turmoil and just a poorly run franchise. And because we were talking about it on the podcast and I want to get your take first. Like, what's the exit plan for Belichick? How does this end? And I know you've written about it. I know you've been critical as anybody would be. You've been in, that building for the most part for what, 2 decades? Like you know how this is. You've had Bill mumble nothing to your questions for quite some time. How does this end?
So Robert Kraft has this saying. He talks about, and it, this is long before you get to this situation with Bill, of finding an elegant solution. And I think that is probably what he would like to have happen here. That the elegant solution would be the season is a disaster. They get to the end of it. He doesn't want to fire him in season, and honestly, like, I mean, I get it. There's only 32 head coaching jobs, but I don't know that if I was someone, I'd want to take over interim here because of what the roster looks like and how things are going. But I it's almost like get to the end of the year, have the meeting with him and just say, it's not working anymore, and like, let's do it together. Let's have the joint release, the joint press conference, like, and I think Bill still wants to coach. So that's going to add a layer to this because of the many things that the Patriots have kept secret over the years is Bill's pay, which we all believe is around $25 million, but we don't fully know, and how many years he has left on his deal. So
wait.
Yeah.
Say that again?
The feeling has been he's in the $20 to $25 million bucket.
Per year?
Per year.
Come on.
That he has been the highest paid coach for many, many moons. Yes. Yep.
What would Sun Tzu think of that? Like, that's unbelievable.
Somehow he would tweak it to make it so that Sun Tzu was on his side.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting part of it too, because Robert watches his money. Like, they've done all these things, they built this place, the new lighthouse and the thing and it's beautiful, whatever, right? When he went on that free agent spending spree a couple years ago with Judon and Hunter Henry and then guys like Jonnu Smith and Aguilar, like, it was not exactly the greatest amount of, or the wisest amount of money spent. That even last year, 2 years removed from it, Robert was still talking about how much money he had to spend for Bill to do that. And then what were the results he got, right? One, they make the playoffs the first year after they did that with Mac as a quarterback. Bill's beat him by 30. And then last year, 8-9 and in disarray. And then, of course, now you're 1-5 with some of those same players still here. Jonnu Smith, by the way, is their second highest paid offensive player, even though he's not on the roster, even though you traded him to Atlanta. So, So you start to look at this picture and say, now, does Robert, who didn't like the idea of having to spend all that money on these players and then getting limited results, does Robert want to pay his coach? If his coach has 2 more years left on his deal, does Robert want to pay him to go away? Because if I'm Bill and this can't happen, or like I don't have leverage, like no one else wants me, whatever. I mean, who knows if he's 2-15, maybe he's not, like, no one cares about him anymore. No one wants to hire him. Does Robert want to pay him to go away? Like it's very complicated. There's a lot of layers to it. And there's definitely going to be leverage plays during the course of this. You know, Robert was in New York for the league meetings. He always talks at these things. They're quarterly, right? Did not talk, which to me says volumes about what he feels about where the team is at, the state of the team right now. So rather than speak and say something that he might regret, he's just not going to speak at all.
This is nuts.
Yep. It is. And you want to carry it further. So Gerard Mayo is the linebackers coach, former Patriot player, former first rounder, been on the staff now for a handful of years, is sort of like the co-defensive coordinator with Steve Belichick, Bill's son. But Steve's more the face of it, and Gerard's more of the sort of whatever, behind the scenes type thing.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling is 2 years ago, Gerard took a head coaching interview, and he was offered, again, I think a couple places this previous offseason to interview, and he passed. And then when he passed, we were like, well, that's interesting, right? And then sure enough, a press release, which is incredibly rare, declaring that they had signed him to a contract, Gerard Mayo, the linebackers coach, to a contract extension. Now, in all my years covering this team, I don't remember any press releases announcing contract extensions for any coaches, not Bill, nobody. So that was right away like, okay, so we've got a wink, wink, nod, nod situation here where when Bill goes, Gerard's been promised the job. Now, no one, of course, can admit that because
correct.
You've still, even though Gerard is a minority candidate, you still have to go through the whole process with the Rooney Rule, all these things. So there's that too, right? Like the Mayo's on the staff. The roster's a mess. There are people on the defensive side of the ball who were shocked that the Patriots went defense for their first 3 picks in the draft. Like that, this is the dysfunction we're talking about. Like the people inside the building who coach defense were like, we're all right on defense. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. We'll take Christian Gonzalez. That's great. We'll take Keon White and Marte Mapu. But like, have you seen the offense? Did you see him last year when they couldn't do anything? When our skill guys don't get open, when our quarterback is noodle armed, like that is the last 2 years in particular, or last year and a half, have just been a train wreck. Things crashing, burning.
I'm just writing. I'm thinking about titles. We have a title of this that I sent just to you that you appreciated. But thinking of the words dysfunction and train wreck are for listeners, the subscribers of Buffalo Plus that are under the age of, that are 19 and under, have never heard come out of New England.
Yeah, it's like, and it's funny too, because I still look at them from time to time, even as I've watched and witnessed the bad football that I've seen. I say, are they really that bad? Like, I don't think they're 38-3 against Dallas bad. I don't think they're 34-0 against the Saints bad. But I do think that they're kind of what they showed us in Vegas. Like good enough to hang around, but just so many things have to go right for them to be, especially offensively, for them to be competitive and to score points. I mean, it was 30 straight drives, 12 quarters without a, trip in the red zone. Like, these are the things that they're living by. And as you watch the tape and these guys aren't even open. And then when they are open, the quarterback either doesn't see him or his arm isn't strong enough to get on the ball, or he's inaccurate. It's just one thing after another. The offensive line's a disaster. Like, it's literally like, if you took the offense and you said, all of you guys pretty much can go after the season's over, I don't know that anyone would be upset. I don't think anyone would say, well, we're really going to – okay, Ramondre Stevenson, he's a nice running back, physical guy. David Andrews, a leader, captain. Okay, we'd miss him. But, like, in general, like, see ya. Start over.
I think we could talk for 20 more minutes about like you just giving like dysfunctional Patriot stories, and it would just be
I can't even keep straight. Like there's just so many as I'm talking to you, then like another one pops in my head and another one. And I'm like, it's quite a time.
Well, if you're not following Mike Giardi on at Boston Sports Journal, make sure you're doing it now, even for Bills fans, because it was always one of those things. It was like you almost like you tried to like block it out because it was like they were on another world. They were playing a different league. And now I was talking about it like we gave our predictions. I mean, I think this Bills team has issues. We talked about in our podcast the fact of like, and you know it enough. And just real quickly, get your take on a little bit of the offense. I know you're not plugged in like years past when you're covering the whole division, but still the understanding of where this offense is. I thought the Bills should have blown out the Giants. I had said that they shouldn't have had to punt in that game because it was another game where the Giants and Bills are not in the same weight class. The Patriots and Bills are not in the same weight class. Like they're just not. But there is, for everybody that looks at the big picture and says the Bills offense is fine, why is anybody being critical? And then it's like, well, hang on, take a look at those great numbers. And, you know, you see 3 games that are incredible, Washington, Raiders, and the Dolphins game where everything just went right. And then you see 3 other games where nothing really went right. And for as much as you also want to look at that Washington game, it was 16-0 in the fourth quarter. It was still a 2-possession game until AJ Epinesa had a pick 6 that kind of broke the game open. So let's not act like this offense has been flying by. And where I do think that there is a fine line between Ken Dorsey is the worst offensive coordinator and Ken Dorsey is great. Why is everybody still talking about Brian Daboll? Dan, shut up. He's not that good. I think there's a fine line in between there. This is a game where I just look at it and I go, I mean, from your perspective, is the offense what you thought it would be? Even though I know you're looking at it from a little bit from the 10,000 feet above, like what's your thought on it this year? Because I know you've been so involved in it the last few.
Yeah. So no, it's not. And it's more about, I guess I've been waiting like everybody else, like someone to emerge opposite of Stephon. Right. And it just hasn't happened. Gabe, you know, you have Gabe moments, right? He's obviously had some unbelievable moments, but the consistency in production, consistency in targets, like that's not been there. They signed Hardy. He's, you know, like what's that done for you? I know he had the nice orbit motion touchdown, but like by and large, that hasn't happened for you. I love Kincaid. I think they love Kincaid, but same thing, like, and it's still early. We're talking 6 games into the kid's rookie year, but like, I still thought there might be more there too. I know he's dealt with the concussion and whatnot, but it's almost like when I start to look at it now, maybe it's not, to me from the outside looking in and seeing what I've seen of them this year. And I went back and watched the whole Giants game.
Sure. That
maybe it's more personnel than it is scheme. You know, maybe some of these guys that you thought were going to be this are this, and it's not. We're not talking about like, oh, they're bad players. No, we're talking about maybe Dawson Knox is just an average receiving tight end. Like there's going to be good moments. And it's going to be, maybe Gabe is a number 3, but he has to be the number 2 on this team. You know, they still can't get the slot thing right. Like, you know, that hasn't, unless again, Kincaid, it's a different kind of slot. Maybe he becomes that guy for them down the line, but I just start to look at him and be like, that's just, to me, it may be just more people than it is X's and O's.
Real quick, and I want to get one last question. You were there, and I know we've talked about it before. You said you watched the Giants game. Did you see how long the handshake was between McDermott and Daboll?
Yes. Well, remember that I seem to recall, and you would have a better recollection because you were living in it every day, that people tried to brush off. There's not much friction there between the two of them. And I think I remember being like, dude, anytime that Sean could tweak Brian, he was tweaking Brian over the last 2 years, right?
Yep.
And he's doing the same thing to Dorsey, right? There's still this thing where it's like, Sean is old school. Sean wants to run the football. We got to establish the run.
Line of scrimmage.
Dude, I like running game. I'm not one of these guys like throw it 700 times. Like, I like that idea. I do think offensive linemen would rather go forward then take a step back and have to receive the hit instead of giving the hit. But that's not what you are. You have Josh Allen. You're not a running football team. So he can talk about, oh, well, if you saw the way we, started the game and we were able to establish the run, or you just kept the ball out of Josh's hands, and I'll take the boneheaded Josh interception or fumble or him taking a hit. He's your best player. He's one of the best, 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league. What are we doing? He's a freak. Let the freak do what the freak does.
Yeah, I thought it was very telling on Wednesday. I thought this was the first time where Sean sometimes takes questions and turns them general, where you can ask something specific and he makes them general.
Yep.
This time we were asking some general questions and he made them specific about the offense, the fact that there wasn't consistency, the fact that they lacked approach, the fact that they lacked development, all of those things. It reminded me of when there were subtle shots taken at Dable at the end of his tenure of, we need to do this. And Dable kind of coming back being like, we ain't going to do that. We are who we are. Right. Because at the end of the day, it's Dable's career and face on the offense. It's not Sean's.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's, again, and it's not just 2 games. It's not just Jacksonville and it's not just the Giants. I go back to last year and I remember being in the press box in the playoff game saying, I think Ken Dorsey may be coaching for his job against Cincinnati in the playoff game. And that game did not go well at all. And I see what Tua has. I see what Sean McVay has done, with a ragtag group there. Obviously, you still have Matt Stafford, but free plays. What Brock Purdy gets is just free, easy plays. And the touchdown to Quentin Morris is just Josh being an alien. It's not a play design. I give Dorsey credit for the Hardy touchdown. Like you said, phenomenal play design, play call, timing, all of those things. But I don't give Dable or Dorsey credit for Josh running around, throwing it to a tight end who's double covered on one ankle.
Yeah. Interesting choice, right? He's made some ridiculous throws. It was the game after the Jets game, and he made a throw down by the goal line that was just absurd. But
to Davis running across.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stupid.
Thank you.
It's one of those no. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So look, I think we talked at the end of last year, maybe on a pod, where we were discussing Dorsey, and I said, all right, well, Sean got Leslie out the door. It's my defense now, so that stops with me. Well, that leaves only one other fall guy if this doesn't happen, and that's Dorsey. And look, I'm not, when I say it's more about the players than the X's and O's. I'm not saying the X's and O's are perfect. They're not.
Agreed.
I mean, there are a handful of guys calling plays right now, right? Shanahan, McDaniel, those guys, McVay, where they're creating these sorts of things that you don't see anywhere else. But then when you look at the big picture, and this is what I don't like.
But they don't all have Josh Allen. That's what bugs me.
Right. But maybe that part of it is, well, we have Josh Allen. We don't have to be. You just have to. I know. It's, if you think about Tua right now, you think about Purdy. They're not these physically gifted freaks, right? Look at what Kansas City's doing right now. Their offense has not been what it's been, right? I don't even think they're top 10 in DVOA on offense. Their offense is basically Mahomes buying time so that eventually somebody gets free.
Kelsey gets up, yeah.
But this is an Andy Reid. Andy Reid's a great offensive coach. We've seen him do unbelievable things. Sometimes I think it's just the personality. They've lost a lot of people. Their wide receivers are a bunch of kids, right? Who maybe Rashee Rice is a really good player a year from now. Maybe Sky Moore develops. Maybe Kadarius Toney finally decides to stay healthy and actually concentrate on football and not his rap career or whatever. Those are the things you have to deal with. But it's almost to me that's sometimes what you get with Josh too, where you're just eventually he's just gonna make a play. He's gonna run around. He's gonna find an opening. He's gonna make it.
It's just a tough identity, I feel like, to bank on. And like I said, through, especially, and again, I know people have listened to follow the channel and subscribe. It's they had an identity weeks 2, 3, and 4 where it was under center and it was play action and it works. And all of a sudden it's against the Giants, it's second and goal from the 1 and it's a shotgun draw. And it's like,
shoot the shotgun. I would take any shotgun play inside the 3, and unless it's the 3rd down, like I launch it to the moon. I don't even want to see it.
So I know we got off and change, but I did want to. I wanted to get your impression on the Bills' offense, just because you are so knowledgeable on the entire division and everything like that. Last question before we go: how can the Patriots win this game?
Muck it up. Run. Like obviously with Daquan Jones out, Ed Oliver's and Ed Oliver didn't practice again today. Like the interior struggled last week, especially that stretch there where Barkley busted off a couple big runs. Peku got tossed out of the game. Basically, like we're just going to keep trying to find an answer there. Oliver was playing way too much, which probably contributed to the total problem. Like to me, it's try to power football. If you saw the Patriots game against the Raiders, Mac Jones was the quickest from snap to release throwing the ball because they can't protect. So everything's going to be quick and short. They popped it got called back, but they popped a like 74-yarder to Ezekiel Elliott, just a pass in the flat. He made a couple nice moves. The hold was whatever. I understand what they called it, but it was one of those ones where you could have been like, okay, we don't have to call that, but they did. But that's to me, and if they can somehow, as a defense, revert to the way they used to get to Josh, because it's been 3 years since they did that. And even last year where Patriot fans celebrated sort of the closeness of both of those games and, they could have won the last game. And I was like, well, one, the Bills shouldn't have been playing football that day. We were 6 days removed from DeMar Hamlin. And 2, they're still way better. Like it's still way better than you. The way the Patriots played them in the first game last year, if you remember, was like they were just like they just didn't want to get embarrassed. That's truly how they coached that game. Like let him complete all these passes underneath us.
Yes,
we're gonna make him play fit. And look, that's what they did to Miami earlier this year. And I could see the same sort of approach here with Buffalo, where let's just try to keep it close, and maybe maybe Josh gets stupid and makes a play or two, and we get a defensive touchdown, which is something they lived off last year. I think they had 8 defensive and special teams touchdowns last year. They have bupkis this year.
I think I think Bill had like a really bad surrender cobra punt. Like you got to go for this, and he punted to be like, we're just going to save face instead of actually trying to make this game competitive. I remember that.
He did it against the Saints. I think it was 24-0, but it was early third quarter. They had the ball on the 40 going in, and he punted. And his answer to that was, well, if we could start doing better if we could be productive on 3rd down, I think about going for it on 4th down. He's like, I couldn't, he was
touche.
I mean, he had to go for it. He should have gone for it. What the hell's the point? He didn't. To your point, it was almost like we just don't want him to score any more points. Like we're going to lose. So let's try to keep this semi-respectable. So I would imagine that they're going to sit back and try to hope and pray that they get the 2020-ish version of Josh Allen and not the last 3 years of Josh. Or maybe they get the New York Jets in the opener, Josh Allen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's staggering. I looked at the numbers from the Jets, Giants, Jags games. If you look at just those 3 games, the Bills are 28th in the league in points per game. It's 16.7 points per game. They have 8 turnovers, which is 5th most, and their yards would be 15th in the NFL. If you took those 3 games, the other 3 games, they'd be 1st in points per game at 41. They'd be 2nd in yards per game, only behind Miami, and they'd only have 1 turnover. Like it is a tale of 2 offenses.
Yep.
And it's not just one game. You can't just take the Jets game like we did when the Bills were 3-1. You said, throw the Jets game out. Like that was just a game that, the Jets play the Bills tough. They just seem to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see, because I think that the Bills haven't shown me the ability lately to blow teams out, to not muck it up, because they have been mucked up the last 2 weeks, and it's caused them fits. So Mike and Jenna will be in your neck of the woods, friend,
I can't believe they kicked you out of this thing. We were going to go. You and I were going to tear up the town, and then
Unbelievable,
Yeah,
right? The two,
yeah.
and they went to London. Like the two kids, my wife wasn't really a huge fan of me going away for a week to go drink beer in London, and watch
Ridiculous.
a rowdy soccer game. So,
but nice of them to show up today, by the way, for this. I appreciate that they they missed me so much that they pulled big time me. I'll give you one more thing as you're talking about all these numbers. Derrick Henry has a touchdown pass in the month of October. Mac Jones doesn't. He's at 5 interceptions. But
I was gonna write that out.
5 giveaways, maybe. Whatever. It's not great.
I always like good things were put in the good clips before the open of the show. You know, you watch a YouTube video and you're like, wait, is the YouTube video started already? But because it's like the best clips, that one's definitely gonna go in there. That one's gonna go in there.
I helped you out.
Mike, you're the best, man. I appreciate it as always. Again, follow Boston Sports Journal at Mike Giardi. You're the best. You're the GOAT Buffalo Plus guest. There's no getting around it. Appreciate it as always. And I think fans, even more than normal, would love to hear you just pretty much shit talk the Patriots like we did for the last 35 minutes. This was awesome, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I suspect the next time Patriots play the Bills, I'll probably have another 30 minutes worth of information and stories to tell you guys.
I appreciate it as always, man. Thanks again for your time. All the best to you and the family, and we'll catch you next time. All right, man?
You too, buddy.
This is the Buffalo Plus Podcast, brought to you by Connors and Ferris.